Hey everyone, it's Connor with Lichtenfelds. On this edition of Garden Chores, we wanted to go over a few things that you can be doing in the yard now. Things are heating up, but there's still lots of things that can be done outside. Plants are growing, we just got some rain, and there's lots to be done out in the yard. So we wanted to go over a few tips of things that you can do to spruce up the yard, get things ready for summertime, and just make sure that your Lichtenfelds purchases you've made over the last little while are successful this spring, or this summer, I should say. So tip number one, and this is how we started out the last video, but it is 100% important for all of your plant purchases, stuff that you purchase in the spring, and maybe even some stuff from the late winter time, and that's water. So water on your plants is the cause of failure in plant material 99% of the time coming out of the gate. You got to think about it. All of the material you purchase at the nursery has been grown from either from seed or cuttings all the way through the process, with some small perennials, maybe a couple of months, up to some of the more expensive things like Japanese maples. It may have been in a nursery pot for 6-7 years. So chances are the material, if you're getting it and it looks good, it's probably not the material's fault. It's probably the watering situation when it gets home. This time of year, as it starts getting hotter, we recommend watering all of your purchases 2 to 3 times a week deeply. If you read our garden guide up on our website, it's very clear on how to plant things so that the water is properly retained, how to amend the soil to make sure that there's good soil in there that will get water into the root ball and then drain out. And then also how to water moving forward as far as times. We list out in our garden guide, which we'll link to in the description below. We'll link to the garden guide that explains how to water based on the pot size. We point out in the winter time that that planting in the winter, you should never plant a frozen root ball. Now, the spring and summer parallel to that is never to plant a dry root ball. We have found that if you plant something dry, it's going to be really hard to get it back to the right moisture level in the ground. You may even see that an area looks moist on the top, but that the root ball, if it was not wet before it was planted, it may not have the proper moisture retention that it should. So very important to not plant the root ball dry. So that means to water the plant thoroughly before planting, plant it correctly using the steps that we talk about in our garden guide, and then properly water the plant in after, and then 2 to 3 times a week afterward. So we'll also link to the planting video that we did last year, show you how we recommend planting things. And then if you just follow these watering tips, making sure to, number one, stick to hand watering. Don't rely on a drip system on your new purchases. You just spent probably a couple $100 on either several plants, or you could even spend that on one really expensive Japanese maple. So you've spent the money on the plant. It's really important to hand water it the 2 to 3 times a week. Don't rely on a sprinkler system. Some kind of an overhead system is not going to soak in deep enough. A 15-gallon root ball is probably going to be 18 inches deep into the ground, and it's going to take a lot of water from a sprinkler system like for lawns to really soak to the bottom. So we recommend hand watering to make sure that water gets all the way to the bottom of the root ball. So we're here in the yard at our house. Wanted to go through a couple of things, show you some things that we're cleaning up around the house, and also go through maybe a couple of tips on pruning some different flowering plants. So let's go on into the yard and we'll talk about some other advice for your summer gardening. Okay, so we're over here in an area of my yard that gets sun up until about noon, and then it's in the shade the rest of the time. And this is a perfect area to plant the 2 plants that I have right here. This is Tiny Tough Stuff. This is a Hydrangea serrata, or mountain hydrangea. It's a lace cap, which you can see in the back here has a really nice bluish purple color, and that's because of the acidic soil that we have in our area here. Now you can see a little bit of frost damage here from that late freeze that we had, but as a general rule, this plant has really filled out nicely and is starting to bloom really well. Like I said, this is called Tiny Tough Stuff. There are others in the series that we can link to and show you. Plants like this really do prefer a little bit of shade in the afternoon. Now, some of the branded companies out there will put it as a full sun plant on their websites. We've really found that not to be the case here in the upstate. I have some in another area, and they just do not hold up in the really, really hot summer heat in the afternoons. So I recommend planting this in a spot that's going to get a little bit of shade. Also next to it, you see we have oak leaf hydrangea. I forget the variety on this. I think it's Snowflake, but it's a double bloom. It's really, really pretty. You can see on both sides. Another one that definitely needs afternoon shade. But what I wanted to talk about with the hydrangeas is pruning. So a lot of people are not sure when to prune hydrangeas. They hear a lot of different types of advice on when to prune certain things. And it really comes down to what kind of variety you have. So the newer introductions from companies like Proven Winners and First Editions, others like that, most of their hydrangeas are going to bloom on both old and new wood. So what that means is that both the new growth that comes out will bloom, as well as the old wood from last year, you'll have blooms on both of them. So for one like Tiny Tough Stuff, which is a old and new wood bloomer, this plant, you can prune it really anytime and you're gonna get flowers pretty reliably. Now what you can see is this one is extra heavy on the back side. I believe I pruned the front side of this plant last year because it was coming out into my aisle a little bit. And so as a rule, the back has bloomed a little bit more than the front has. Now ones like the oak leaf hydrangea, this is one that blooms on both old and new as well. So you can see this is all new growth up here at the top, and then I've got a nice bloom at the top of it. So now some older varieties of hydrangeas only bloom on old wood. So what that means is the older growth, basically 1-year-old growth, is where your flower buds are going to form. So for ones like these, you're really fine to prune anytime, but for the old ones, you want to prune immediately after flowering. So what that means is that there will still be enough time for a flower bud to develop on the plant. If you wait until the winter time to cut on it, you'll still have vegetative growth the next year, but you'll already cut off the flower buds and you'll maybe never see flowers. So it's important to know which kind of variety you have as to whether it blooms on old and new or just old. And that goes on all hydrangeas. The exception to that would be the sun hydrangeas like Limelight, Little Lime, Bobo hydrangea, all of the hydrangea paniculatas. Unless there's some I don't know about, all of those bloom on the new growth. So you can rest assured that you can really cut on it about any time and you'll get flowers. A lot of people ask about pH with hydrangeas. They know that they've heard something about the pH being affected. You can see because we have acidic soil here in South Carolina, we have a blue color on this hydrangea. If we had amended the soil with lime, then we would see more pink flowers on this one. That goes for all of the hydrangeas, whether it be the big leaf hydrangeas, Hydrangea macrophylla, or the Hydrangea serrata, like this mountain hydrangea. Now the oak leaf hydrangea are not pH dependent, so they're all going to be either a white or like a pinkish red. So yeah, that's it about hydrangeas. Just wanted to give a little bit of a tip on those. We love both of these for the areas that catch some afternoon shade. For ones that have pretty much full sun, the Hydrangea paniculatas, like I named earlier, are great ones to use in those spaces. So let's move on and talk about some elderberry. So last year, we brought in a new variety of elderberry from Proven Winners. It was lemony lace elderberry, which you can see on either side of me. I love the foliage on this. I think it's a super neat looking plant. It contrasts really well with purples. So like the nice lavender that you see in front of me, this is done really well. But these plants are only about 1.5 years old and have really grown well. Forgive any weeds that you see in the picture, but I really like the elderberry here and the contrast it has with this lilac I have here in the back. But one question we got a lot last year, and we really didn't have a great answer for it, was, is this plant going to produce elderberries, the actual fruit? I knew it made for a great foliage plant, but I really wasn't sure, so we did some research on it, and we have an answer for you. So the elderberry that is native to here is Sambucus nigra, which is like the native elderberry, produces the elderberry fruit. However, it does not reliably pollinate this one, which is Sambucus racemosa, I believe is the botanical name. So while it makes for a great foliage plant, you most likely will not get berries on this one. Now, Proven Winners does sell a pollinator for this. It's called Black Lace, which we'll link to below. Black Lace is one that does pollinate this from time to time. It is a different variety, but sometimes the blooming lines up to where you do get flowers, or you do get flowers at the same time with both of these, and then at that point you will get some berries. Now, the really cool thing is if you pair the Black Lace elderberry and a new one also from Proven Winners called Instant Karma. Pair both of those together. We'll link to both of those, show you pictures of them right here. You'll just really like the foliage on the Instant Karma. It has a really nice variegated foliage. But if you pair the two of those, you will get elderberry fruit from your plants. and both really do have a nice textural interest as well. So if you were wondering if you could get berries from your lemony lace that you purchased from us over the last year or so, the answer is probably not. It makes for a great foliage plant, and I think, obviously, I thought it was cool enough to plant it here at my house, but just know that most likely you aren't going to get berries from it. You may get lucky some years. They might line up together to where you do get pollination, but as a general rule, it's just going to be a really nice foliage plant for your yard. So hopefully that answered your elderberry question, any of you that may have asked over the last year or so. Now, just a little quick tip about your irises. Now, most iris will have already bloomed by now, so you'll have gotten a lot of really nice flowers and really nice fragrant flowers, but what you'll be left with is this really ugly seed pod looking thing. Usually what we do about this time with the irises is we just come down here. All of this is going to be useless for the rest of the season, so you can come all the way down to the end of the branching here and just chop it off. Same thing on both of those. Get rid of them, come down in here, get rid of them, and then you're still left with this really nice kind of blue-green foliage for the rest of the season. Now, these irises were a one-time shot. These are spring blooming irises. However, new varieties have come out. These are very old heirloom varieties that I have here. There have been new varieties that have come out that are reblooming irises. For the rebloomers, you'll want to watch our seminar next week as Chris Cheney from Piedmont Iris Farm goes over a couple of his favorites. So just a little quick tip to get your irises looking nice so that you still have the foliage for the rest of the year and you get rid of the nasty looking seed pods. All right, so the last thing we wanted to talk about is maintaining our annuals. Now, you've probably planted annuals already this season. You're super happy with how they've turned out. They're growing, everything's looking great, but you want to make sure you maintain them for the season. A lot of times we can get really hyped up with getting things looking really good in the springtime, and then we kind of let it peter out during the summertime and it doesn't look as nice. Well, one way that you can keep things looking really, really nice is by proper fertilization. We have been using, over the last year or so, we've been trialing this Nelson's fertilizer like I have right here. This is their Color Star product, and it's for all of the heavy feeders that you have. That can be your annual plants, like our window boxes that we have here in the front. Courtney's done a great job of planting up a good selection of annuals here, also mixing in some perennials and some herbs. But it's important to keep them happy during the summertime when it gets so hot. Obviously, you want to water really well, but you're also going to want to make sure that you're using something that has a high nitrogen number to keep these guys happy. There's going to be a lot of vegetative growth out of the annuals because they only have a limited time to live. So something like this Color Star product is great. Like I said, we trialed this for about a year before we offered it to our customers, and it was just amazing the amount of time that or the amount of results that we got from this product. This is not a pitch. We just like to sell stuff that works well, and the Nelsons really fit the bill. So this is a product that you would use on your annuals here, as well as heavy feeders, things like butterfly bush that are going to be blooming all summertime, things like your roses, again, blooming all summer, and can really use a little handful of it on just about anything. Now, they also have a tree and shrub product that you can use for your shrubs. So things like this Coppertone Distillium that you have in front here, and the Spirea that I have in front of that as well. All of these plants, you can use the tree and shrub fertilizer that Nelson's offers. Something like this lavender that I have here to my side. The lavender, if you are using it for culinary purposes, it would be great, or even as a cut bloom. The Color Star would work really well on that, especially this time of year when you have so many nice flowers coming off the lavender. You want to make sure that it's getting plenty of nutrients. So yeah, those are just a couple of tips here on the second edition of Garden Chores. I hope that we were able to give you a little bit of information on the hydrangeas, give you some info on elderberry, and then also just show you some quick tips of things that you can do to spruce up the garden and get it ready for the hot summertime. So we appreciate you watching. As always, you can look at all of our trees and shrubs on our website at lichtenfelds.com. Videos like this will be on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page, so you can go on there and give us a like and a follow. And as always, if you have any questions at all, you can come out to the nursery and see us. So, during the summertime, we're out 8:30 to 4, Monday to Saturday. We take off a little early, like I said, at 4 o'clock, just so that we can miss this hot afternoon sun like I'm feeling right now in this video. But we would love to answer any questions that you have. Make sure that you're doing everything right so that your plants are successful for this summer and for years to come. So thank you for watching, and hope you stay tuned for the next one.